People say that your competitors who adopt AI are a threat, but is that true?
Bolting on AI to your process, your workflows, or even a product isn't good enough. The danger that you should be looking for is not really your competition using AI, it's native AI companies.
It's kind of like you're in the Titanic and they're in a little speedboat, right? Managing change inside of an organization does require human involvement.
There has to be a dedicated, subject matter expert. The AI champion, though, these are the people ideally in the company who already use AI. And what you want to do with that person, and ideally a group of those people, is form yourself a committee, because you need a group to keep people accountable. There's a lot of human behavior you have to change.
The world is going through a paradigm shift, and we can either be survivors or we can be effectively knocked off. There's a storm coming.
There will be companies in your industry that are going to be AI native, that will maybe have significantly less people that can do significantly more.
My special guest is an AI strategist. He's co-founder of 0 to 60.ai, spelled out 0260.ai, a consultancy that helps mid-sized traditional businesses successfully implement AI. He's co-host of the AI Accelerator for Business show. Karl Yeh, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks a lot, Michael. I've been a long time listener of, especially on Social Media Examiner, which, you're really well known for. So, just a pleasure to be here.
It's awesome to have you here. So let me start with this first question. How in the world did you get into AI? Because I know you're like most of us, there was a journey, right? So you were known for something else. Now you're getting known for AI.
It actually started in 2014, where I think you and I probably met 2013, 2014 at Content Marketing World. And it was actually, I think most of your audience, a lot of your audience would know a person named Paul Reitzer. I was actually at one of his sessions, and he had a book called, I think, the Marketing Blueprint, I think. And I actually asked him to sign it, and he was signing it. And I just have a quick conversation with him. And he was talking about all the stuff that he was doing in terms of AI or getting into. So that's kind of the same time I started looking. But really where it really piqued my interest was 2018 at Google I/O. I wasn't there. I remember where I was at the time, and I was watching Sundar do this restaurant reservation through AI. And I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And this is where I really dug deep, because I thought, hey, this is coming now. Well, obviously it didn't. 2018, 2019, 2020. Played with the tools, GPT-2, GPT-3, some of the image. And obviously no one knew that anything would be, even the adoption would be this high in terms of people adopting it, obviously until November 2022. And that's really where everything took off. And coming from that content creator marketing background, I just started creating content on it. And some businesses saw it that I used to work with, wanted me to come in and speak, and then kind of snowballed around that. Started learning, because I have a bit of a background in coding, started learning more of building retrieval augmented generation, things like that. And then my business partner kind of jumped the gun and incorporated us in, I think, September 2023. And here we are.
I love it. And you've been working with a lot of traditional businesses. And what I mean by traditional businesses is businesses that have been around for a very long time. And we're going to get into some of this in a little bit, but what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see when it comes to AI adoption? Because obviously you're talking to a lot of people, you're hearing a lot of things.
Well, I think that really, for me, I see three major areas. The first one is the assumption that it's easy. And when we talk about adoption, we're not talking just adoption for 1 month. We're talking, you have to have sustained adoption, right? 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, because there's going to be some money and some resources put into it by the business. And also the assumption that it's just bolting AI onto your current processes and workflows, which if you do, yes, you'll get some productivity gains and efficiency gains. But I think doing this for 2 years now, or over 2 years, we're starting to notice, and this is kind of the thought I had, was bolting on AI to your process, your workflows, or even a product isn't good enough. There was that old story about the steam engine, right? Where it wasn't until the system was built for electricity, not for steam, not where you just replace the steam and electricity with a steam engine, but you have to actually rebuild the entire process for electricity, that the productivity gains, were there. So what we're looking at is like you have to rebuild your processes and systems from ground up, being AI centric, not just adding AI to it. I think the third big piece is, and I think the most important piece is the change management piece, right? You have to do AI adoption, you have to change people's behaviors because they've been trained with whatever profession they have, years, decades, as well as each company has built their processes over many years, especially traditional companies where it's years or decades of over process of complexity with more process, right? So bolting on AI to that is very, very difficult. And we'll go through some examples later on, but that's really why from AI, adoption misconception, these are the three things that we're always noticing.
What's your take on the phrase that people say all the time, which is you need to get ahead of your competition or they're going to crush you because they're embracing AI? What's your view on that?
Yeah, your competition will use AI and maybe they'll get a little bit of ahead, but really, the danger that you should be looking for is not really your competition using AI. It's native AI companies,
Mm.
right? That don't have change management, don't have to bolt on processes. All their processes are already AI centric. Their people are already very knowledgeable or trained or very flexible in adopting AI into their workflow. And I think one of the most important things is this has nothing to do with current business operations because this is how businesses have been built. But there's a lot of business processes and operations of legacy and current businesses that just don't jive with AI, right? So, for example, like the way IT rolls out technology, whether it's, and then let's say annual budgeting, long RFP processes, waterfall project management, some of these things don't jive where AI is, a, the progress is within weeks, within months, and your business has to be ready to adopt or be flexible enough to change with the new tech because the tech could be cannibalized by something else or the major AI labs could release a feature that could wipe out what you've been using and it's now $20 a month instead of you paying $30,000-$40,000 a month.
It's a really fascinating concept to think about the fact that, yeah, your competitors who embrace AI, your known competitors who embrace AI, there's this race that you're all in, right? And maybe they'll be a little bit ahead of you one week and you'll be a little bit ahead of them the next week. But what I'm hearing you say is the bigger opportunity or threat, if you will, is going to be these startups that are going to come completely without any preconceived notions of how things ought to be done. They're going to be very AI focused. They're going to leverage AI to give them an unfair, what we say is unfair, but a competitive edge, and they're going to come and they're all of a sudden going to just rush ahead of you. It's kind of like you're in the Titanic and they're in a little speedboat, right? But their little speedboat is just as powerful as your Titanic. That's really the threat that we're facing here, which is interesting, which is why I think it's so important we talk about getting implementation of AI right inside the business. So what I want to ask you is, why is this so important for businesses today, especially traditional businesses? Said another way, if people listening pay attention and implement the things we're going to unravel today, like when this is done well, what is the upside here?
obviously right away, you're going to get your productivity efficiency gains, right? So let's say you do bolt on AI into your current process and workflows, you'll get that productivity gain. And we're not saying 95% full autonomous workflow, 100%. No, our big thing was always been 10 to 40% to start and then kind of build on from there. So you'll automatically get
percent what? Improvements?
productivity gain, efficiency gain, improvements to your system, whether it's 10. And I think there's a little bit of management, like you have to manage the expectations, because what we're noticing is some businesses and some people think, oh, AI can do all this stuff for me, probably because of the hype cycle. But then also, let's say, we implement an AI, whatever AI solution, automation, whatever it is, and let's say it doesn't work 100%. It's like, oh, you know what? Not for me. It doesn't do that task 100%. So I'm going to keep doing what I used to do. It's like, well, no, it can do 30%, 40% better. So why are you going back to what you were doing rather than, hey, we're 30% of the way. You just cut out, say, 7 hours a month. That's pretty good, rather than continuing to do, 20, 30 hours. So that's what I mean by immediate productive efficiency gains. But also, I think it's more important when you're training or retraining your own workforce, you're helping kind of the rising tide lifts all boats, where if everyone in your company is just 20% better, let's just say at prompting, 20% better at prompting, you're going to get that productivity and efficiency gain without any type of custom solution or built automation or whatever, them just having that knowledge. And it's also preparing your workforce for this new AI economy that's coming, and starting to inject kind of a new way of thinking. Like I was saying, with an AI native company, being flexible. So when new models come in, they can adjust, right? Different types of tools. And back to the issue about, AI native companies coming and, being competitive in your industry, this is what you need to do: is you need to train your team, get a new mindset and focus, because that's what you're competing against. And how do you compete against a company or people that are native? Well, that's the level up the skill set. And you obviously have to keep your business going. So this is where your productivity and efficiency gains happens. But you also have to look at the long term too, is, your employees, the mindset of where your company is going to go in the next 5 years, and where AI is moving as well.
Perfect. Okay, so we are here to talk about how to successfully deploy AI in a business that been around for a while, right? Some sort of a business, traditional business. But anyone who's listening who works for a business that's been around for more than a decade, might be considered traditional. Even my business that's been around since '09 might be perceived to be traditional in my niche, because obviously there's been a lot of change. So where do we begin if we want to implement AI across our business? Where do we start?
Usually you'd start with the discovery, right? So when you talk about discovery, you're looking at all the processes and workflows that your company already has, specifically things that are repetitive, things that are data driven, things that are predictive. I took that from Paul Reitzer's course. And really what we call the eye roll tasks. So if your employees come in and whatever task they roll their eyes at, look at those things. And when I talk about discovery, you don't actually talk very much about AI. You just learn about how those workflows and processes operate. And this is good whether you implement AI or not, because most businesses we've worked with haven't done this kind of audit of their own processes, right? So this is where you begin. You sit with your departments, with your teams, take an hour, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours, and just list those processes, list how they work, all the individual operations. And sometimes it turns into a complaint session, but that's okay, because that's what you want to do. Is you want to get that feedback, not just from your leaders and executives, but from those frontline teams that are dealing with this day in, day out, day in, day out. And that's where you usually start. So for example, we're currently doing a discovery where we just finished a discovery with a land development company, right? And there's a whole list of processes, but two very interesting ones that just happened. The first one is there is somebody, and again, back to decades, layers of complexity, that one of their tasks is to go into a folder, look at, I would say, 50 subfolders, and find if a specific file is there. So that person just clicks file, like goes into every single folder to check if a certain file has been generated by their system. So that's one, right? And that sometimes it takes that person an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to get through that list or looking for different things. Another task would be another person has to generate 5 to 6 business intelligence reports every Monday and extracted from a whole set of PDFs that are updated throughout the week, right? Just two simple tasks that how can, and I'm sure most people are starting to think, hey, wait a minute, AI can probably do those things much faster and or augment it to be not 100%, but maybe 10 to 40%. Just help that person it's a data driven, it's a repetitive task.
Okay, this is really interesting. You know, obviously, the bigger the company, the more there's a lot of these kind of things, right? So, like, if you're dealing with a company, like in my case, that has like maybe 20 people versus a company that has 100 or a couple hundred people, um, I guess the real question is like, first of all, let me back up the train. What I'm hearing you say with this eye roll task is we want to find the things that people do that, frankly, they just wish they didn't have to do. Right? They take time. They involve finding information. They involve doing specific things over and over again, as you called repetitive, predictive, data-driven tasks. And these things happen all the time. Sometimes they're updating spreadsheets, right? Other times they're creating PDFs. Other times they're notifying people that a file has been dropped into a folder, all these kinds of things, right? So there's so many of these things that happen inside of our business, Karl, that like, it's kind of like, do you start with one department typically? Or do you start with one person? Because this could be like you could come up with a list of 100 things really quickly.
Yeah, yeah. So each department, we usually end up with 7 to 8 major things that they identify that's like kind of a more of make work tasks. It's important that work is important in the overall, but it's sort of like, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
Like, why do I like exactly the eye roll? So each department's some companies bigger than others, smaller, but usually 4 to 7 departments um, that we usually deal with, but depends on, your business. I would, the thing is, before you even start discovery two, some things you have to think about and you have to think about the change management pieces. Is the people in this department or team ready for this change?
Mm.
Because that's a big piece. Two, obviously, data cleanliness. How clean is their data? Because sometimes you're getting data sets all over the place. And even with great intentions, there's still a lot of data cleanup that you have to do. And maybe that's a priority as well. So there's those kind of things you have to look at. But from a discoveries perspective, at the very least, now you've outlined all these different eye roll tasks. And sometimes we end up with 40 to 50 per company that have been identified, right? And it's a lot that you can get into.
Well, I love this for anybody who works inside of a decent sized company and you want to try to deploy this strategy that Karl's talking about. I can see how the rationale logically makes a lot of sense. Hey, boss or boss's boss, I believe that I can save the company a substantial amount of money, possibly freeing 10 to 40% of the time of the people that do some of these kinds of tasks. Would you be willing to authorize me to do an audit of opportunities to use AI to basically speed up the amount of time that it takes And the first step of the process is for me to identify early targets, right, where AI makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine they would probably say, sure, right? Because what person who either is a division head or runs a business doesn't understand that there's an enormous amount of process opportunity improvement, inside the business. So once we've done this discovery phase, what comes next?
So you take the notes, and usually you I highly recommend you record these sessions just because there's going to be a lot and it's a lot to take notes of. You take those, and then you actually develop a discovery summary for each department or team that you did with, right? So you have key themes from that discovery session. You have This is where you look at the workflows and processes identified and then connect it to AI solutions, right? So, and we can talk about solutions later, but so you have those lists of solutions that directly address those workflows and processes, the eye roll tests, and so on. But you also can now identify non-AI solutions because there's a lot of times when you're looking at some of these processes and you're like, wait a minute, could be something completely different. Like, for example, we're working with I don't even know how you describe it, a company that develops um, infrastructure for dentists and hospital offices. You see the little children's, I think, play areas and whatnot. So we're working with them. And it was interesting where one department said, hey, we spend 2-3 hours a week updating the format of a file that one department sends to us.
Mm.
And we're like, wait a second. So we just walked over to that department. Hey, could you output this in this format? Oh yeah, no problems. That is not an AI solution. That is a pure communication issue. And that's been going on for years. One department just didn't talk to the other or made assumptions. So you'll find a lot of these too. And so you can address a lot of things.
Well, I love this because change management is a phrase that I'm hearing over and over from a lot of guests on the show here. And managing change inside of a structure, a system, an organization does require human involvement. And I like the fact that you're saying here, hey, some of these things need to be fixed because people are actually not putting quality together in the first place, right? Or they're not putting it in a format that the recipient can use it. And if we can solve for that, human to human, eventually that also might mean that could be optimized down the road with AI. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. And again, there's a lot of things that companies do, years, decades of process that no one's actually reviewed. There's definitely AI solutions, but then there's non-AI solutions as well. So building on that, there's another section where, hey, what are the process and workflows? You have to identify these that we can completely rebuild to be AI centric now. Like, could we knock off this entire process and just rebuild it? And this is where you have to start. This is part of the thinking of, hey, we've been doing this for so long, and now this is kind of the mind shift your people will need. So you'll have that, and then you have a roadmap, right? How 6 months, 18 months plus, and so on. That roadmap for that specific department or team. So there's going to be these discovery summaries for every single department with all these sections. And then based on all that conversation and all these discovery summaries, you can create an AI strategy for your entire company that has, everything that you went through, your all the pilots. But then in addition, in that strategy, you can pick 5 to 7 that your company can start with. So of the 40 to 45, let's pick 5 to 7, 3 to 4 high priority that you can put resources and people behind and focus, and then pick 1, 2, 3 processes that you want to rebuild entirely to be AI centric. So that's usually, when you have that strategy, you have those pilot recommendations, rebuild recommendations, and a roadmap, your company is, you're well positioned. You've connected the problems with solutions. You've got input from frontline. You have like an overall plan for your company, not some hodgepodge of here's a group using AI, here's another group, here's one group. Maybe you have an AI council, but it's kind of disjointed. You have something your business can work towards.
You you have an example?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Yes. So, for example, we worked with an accounting company, and we did this entire strategy discovery summary. I think they had 6 departments, and we full on strategy. And we recommended, think 5, or no, we recommended 6 AI strategies. They accepted 4 of them to get started. So, for example, one of them is an overall of their entire manual data entry. So instead of them, T slips, bank PDFs that someone was manually entering into a spreadsheet, which then would connect to QuickBooks. That was built to be an N8N automation uh, from document recognition. We used Mistral's PDF reader. There's a template version of that, and then connect it to their spreadsheet, actually their CSV, and then connect it to QuickBooks Online. So that was a connection for them. And then they also had a AI phone reception. It was pretty much using a third-party voice reception, mostly to handle like the quick, repetitive calls and help them book consultations, because it was taking a lot of time for their reception to go through this. So those are just 2 examples of the pilots that they launched. And I think now we're going into kind of the scale phase. But yeah, they accepted 3 or 4 of them. They're moving on.
Love it. I got to ask because people want me to ask. Okay, Mistral. For those that don't know, I believe that's a French-based LLM. Their PDF reader. Tell us a little bit about that, and then also tell us about this AI phone reception third-party tool. That if you remember who it was, because
Yeah.
I want people to kind of just know that those exist.
So for Mistral, I think them and Cohere. So Cohere is a Canadian company, so plug for Canadians. They have one of the best PDF or OCR, optical
Character recognition.
yes, that's right. They have, to me, and we've tested it with different large language models, but they had the best one that could recognize a PDF in different formats, because different vendors would, or different businesses would submit different PDFs, and be able to extract the information that we were looking for and then put it into the headlines into their spreadsheet, right? It did the best. It was, I would say, 97% reliable for the most repetitive tasks. So that's an open source model. We built it on premise. So it's not cloud-based, it's on their servers. That's why I really like N8N, because of that on-premise solution. And then for the voice AI reception, we just use Bland AI.
So just for folks that don't know, N8N is a tool that's kind of like Make or Zapier, but you can host it on a server, and then it's kind of like WordPress. It's kind of like open source, so you can lock it down. So when you said you built it on premise, you meant physically on site, not a tool called Premise, right? So
yes.
you built a local version of N8N on one of their servers in the building, so that there was never any concern that any of this information was going to leave the building. Is that effectively what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
And then you also said that phone reception was called Bland. Is that what you said?
Yes. Bland AI. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. People love the tool. So, all right. So now let's move into the pilots. Like, give us some insights on, like, we've identified we've done some discovery at this point. We've presented to our boss or client, in your case, here's some things that we believe will have a material impact on your productivity and dot, 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 dot.
Yep.
So let's talk about how to actually do pilots, like any insights on that.
So when you're looking to do pilots, what we've learned over the past 2 years, there has to be a dedicated, subject matter expert. Whether you use third-party consultants like us or you go internal, you have to dedicate at least one preferably two as your backup, subject matter expert for whatever the task is in whatever the department. So that person actually has to dedicate some of their time. It can't kind of be at the side of their desk. Like, you have to dedicate that resource, because there's a lot of that pilot probably won't get launched unless it's a simple prompting. But even in prompting, there's a lot of back and forth that you need to go through. So, for example, we had a we are working, one of our clients is a construction company, and their task was invoice consolidation. So they have to take vendor PDFs, so like Rona, Home Depot, like they get a lot of these PDFs from different vendors, and they have to check if what the vendor the invoices on the vendor statement matches the invoices in their system.
Mm.
So literally there is one person having to manually look at each invoice and into their system by code to see if the numbers match, right? Well, this is a pretty simple thing with AI, right? So first, we obviously tested it with, comprehensive prompt, just drag and drop the PDF, and drag and drop their
The
registry. Yeah, all their CSV of all the statements for that month, because they have to do it pretty much weekly, and then have it review, look at any discrepancies, which ones are there, which ones aren't, and how much, right? But that takes like a good 1-2 weeks. It's not just for someone who is AI native and can do this. Yeah, you can probably do it, but think about the person who doesn't use AI or barely uses AI, or even just uses AI like as you would Google, to be able to develop that prompt, adjust the prompt, and then, test it over and over and over again to ensure that it's reliable, because that's what you want to do, right? You don't want to be looking at the results and then rechecking. That defeats the whole point. You want to make sure it's reliable, and go forward from there. So we did that with ChatGPT's o3. ChatGPT 5 made it even better. But this is where, when you're looking at pilots, you have the pilot phase, but you also want to scale it. So here's an example of how we scaled.
Real quick before we get into scaling, I want to get back. We're going to get to scaling in a minute, but I want to get back to the internal champion, because give me some guidance, like on how you give your guidance, like to, hey, company X, I need a person internally to be the champion. Like, what does that mean? How do you convey them? What is the expectation of the internal champion?
So there's a difference between the subject matter expert and the champion, right? So the subject matter expert is someone who knows about the topic, doesn't necessarily have to be 100% into AI.
The internal subject matter expert in
Yes,
the process,
on the process, yes.
Okay.
The AI champion, though, these are the people ideally in the company who already use AI, who are excited about it, probably bugging leadership to move forward a little faster. A lot of the times gets pushed down because, the company's like, well, we're going to go there, but you're using it, just use it yourself, and so on. So it's that person. And what you want to do with that person, and ideally a group of those people, is form yourself a committee. And the reason why you need that, and not necessarily to, develop policies and governance, but it's more so, the 2 years we've been doing this with the hundreds of businesses that we've been, meeting, and our clients, is that back to the whole sustained AI adoption, because you need a group to keep people accountable, to keep using whatever solution you had. So even if you have the best AI strategy, even if you build the best AI solution, so for example, this N8N solution for PDFs, right? For the accounting company, you still need someone to put those PDFs into that folder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all you need to do. But what we noticed is after the first month, they stopped putting PDFs into the folder to kick it off. And you're like, well, why do you stop? It's like, oh, I forgot. I got busy. I kind of thought the process was a little cumbersome, even though it's just a drag and drop. It's those kind of things, right? So, and you have to keep people using it accountable. And it's like, oh, I had questions about this, but I didn't want to bother you. It's like, there's a lot of human behavior you have to change, and there's a lot of habits you need to break. So that's why your group of champions has to, meet every month and talk with people, say, hey, are you using it? That's the number one question. Using it, why aren't you using it? um are there any issues with it that didn't come up? Like, those are the things you have to do, because we have to remember, outside of the AI bubble, outside of X, all the people who are excited, most people are like, oh, okay, AI is cool. It's part of a tool, but like, I have stuff to do at work. I have stuff to do at home. I have family life. I have all these different things that AI isn't top of mind. AI isn't, you know, it's not my daily process. And we have to get people to think about it more and use it more to get that sustained AI adoption.
Does this mean, Karl, that it's really important to get buy-in from kind of the top or near the top of the organization, like the division head, and to just like have them say, hey, look, like, this isn't just like a fun little thing we're building for you and you can use it or you can't use it, but to mandate change? Or do you feel like bottom-up approach is the better way to go? Like, what's your thoughts on this?
It's a fine line, because there's a danger with either. There's a danger if you have a mandated session, mandated from top down, hey, you have to use AI. But we've run across that where they've mandated the company, you got to learn AI, use AI. But there's no connection to, this is why the discovery is important. There's no connection to actually helping this person use AI. Worse is if leaders get excited about a demo they've seen before, buy a tool, and then enforce that tool into the company. An example would be Microsoft Copilot. Copilot's good for some things, but buying 200 licenses, and then we get called and be, hey, could you retrain our staff because we're only getting 10 to 15% usage of this? And it's like, but why did you buy this in the first place? And it's like, oh, we thought it would solve this problem. It's like, no, that's why you need to talk to your people, because that is not the problem. And this tool is not, it doesn't jive with what they're looking for. It's not the solution for what their issues are. So the top down is important, but also the bottom up. You can't just have like, oh, groups of people using AI. There has to be some sort of coordinated effort, because again, rising tide lifts all boats. So everybody has to be part of it to get the full business benefits, because it's not just your competitors that you're worried out for. It's that AI native company that's coming. That's like, oh, I don't have to, there is none of this problem. They're starting off with a massive head start.
I really like this conversation. I think that since we're in pilot mode right now, the people that are part of the pilot need to understand what's at stake. We need to explain to them, look, this, first of all, what's the benefits to them, right? If you employ this, those eye roll tasks will dissipate. They will become less necessary. And with that newfound time, you can work on higher order tasks like analyzing things or being creative or working on strategy. And then, but the other side of it is you also need to understand that we as a company are going to eventually have newer businesses that are AI savvy, that don't operate off these old scripts that we've been using for decades. They're going to come along and they're going to crush us. So there's the flip side of it, the problem. We have to embrace this because we have to understand that the world is going through a paradigm shift, and we can either be survivors or we can be effectively knocked off, right? And that is an important discussion that needs to happen. So they need to understand what's in it for them, but they also need to intimately understand what the why is. And then they need to be reminded of that, I would imagine, right? Like, hey, this is something that's happening. And even though it doesn't feel like it's happening, it's kind of like a storm alert, There's a storm coming. Oh, they never come. There's a storm coming.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then the storm. Oh, there's a storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of like, so what about ongoing training and stuff? Like, I mean, do you recommend that? And because obviously when you're in the pilots, what you thought and reality might not match, right? There might need to be some changes.
Yeah. So, when we've seen business training, right? You could have some sort of learning management system and you take the courses there, or you have a lunch and learn. But with AI, you kind of need to have it on a regular basis. So even just having one training of basics of AI, let's say prompting or whatever, because of all the changes, a training that even the training we did for a company 3 months ago, we kind of need to update it because, for example, a majority of the people in that company are using ChatGPT. Well, with GPT-5, you have to adjust how you prompt because there's just the way that it operates and it over delivers. So sometimes you have to go back and retrain that. So that's something a little different for a lot of companies because it's usually, hey, 1, 2 trainings were done. It's like, no, 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 you need to keep going. And this is part of going back to your AI committee or AI champions. It's not just, reviewing projects. It's like, hey, we got to develop these training systems ongoing to let people know, hey, you got to change it a little bit because this new feature, this new tool, this new way of doing things, you have to adjust. And if you step back a bit, that's a whole different way for businesses to operate where you have to constantly change not just the tool feature, but how you operate. That's a completely different way for businesses to operate. And that's what I mean, right? So, um, because the training goes hand in hand with the mindset and the change management that your company needs to go through to do that. And if we're talking about, where is the storm coming from? Where is this, where are these AI natives? All you have to do is go to Y Combinator, go for the requests for startups. Their summer 2025, they literally say it on the thing. Instead of working with the dinosaurs, you can make them extinct. Like they're looking for startups to go native against all these traditional industries. So they're funding it. There will be companies in your industry that are going to be AI native that will maybe have significantly less people that can do significantly more.
Okay, that's kind of crazy. But scary, but also like nothing like a little fire under the bottom side here. So like, okay, let's say we've successfully had a pilot. So what's next?
So, what's next is how can you scale that pilot, but also have to remember your pilot has to be flexible enough to change, right? Because the tools are changing, the techniques are changing. So, an example here would be going back to the construction company, that invoice consolidation. We initially used ChatGPT o3 to do that consolidation, cut a lot of hours out of them, but they still have to drag and drop that. So the next thing we did is a custom GPT, made it even easier. There's a custom GPT for you, similar instructions, drag and drop, cool. The next thing though is because ChatGPT has connectors, you connect it directly to the file. So you don't even need to drag and drop anymore. You just, hey, in this file, here's the prompt, execute, and away it goes. So that's the next part. Now we're looking at, hey, with ChatGPT's agent mode, we tested, hey, can the agent do the same thing we were doing, copy and paste manually? Yes, it can. Combine that with connectors and combine that with their scheduled task. So now there's no dragging and dropping. There's no even opening the task. You have a scheduled agent to do this invoice consolidation every Friday. So now this agent executes every Friday this consolidation. You do a spot check here and there to make sure, but that's kind of the next piece that we're testing out to ensure reliability. But that's kind of an example of how, your invoice consolidation not just scales, but improves over time with the tools that are coming with it.
Wow. Karl, I mean, this is crazy stuff that we're talking about, right? Like who would have thunk a couple of years ago we'd be talking about what we're talking about today, but it's really, really cool. And I know we've simply just scratched the surface of what you and your business do. if people want to connect with you, Karl Yeh, on the socials, do you have a preferred platform? And if they want to work with your business, where would you like to send them?
Yeah, three major things. One is 0to60.ai. That's our website. Two, we run a show called the AI Accelerator for Business show, YouTube, your preferred podcast platform of choice. And finally, you can find me on TikTok. I do a lot of videos there on everything that we talked about and more.
Thank you, Karl, so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks, Michael.